Sam Jacobs, how are you?
I'm doing well, Stephen. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks so much. I believe you're somewhere in the south of France at the moment. I thought you were in New York, so I thought the timing was very early for you, but we're on similar time zones.
This is it was I suggested this time very strategically.
Well, look, first of all, as I said, thank you. The purpose of these conversations and these chats is to talk to leaders like yourself, who are just really good at content posting on LinkedIn and who have been successful in their journey with content posting and building an audience. A lot of the work that I do with early stage founders is trying to encourage and help and support these people to get into the habit of content posting and discuss the importance of it. How I like to open up these conversations first, Sam, is sharing what I love the most about your content. And number one for me is just how relevant it is to your audience, and how educational it is. I always learn something new when I read your posts. Yeah,
Thank you.
I really enjoy the long form content that you do. And I don't think I see it as much. So that's just something that I want to open up with.
Thank you very much. And I will keep at it. Uh,
We
there's new stuff coming out this week, so hopefully you like it.
Nice. We met very briefly when you were in Dublin in July at the Pavilion Dublin chapter. And for those listening in who haven't heard of Pavilion or want to learn more about Pavilion, it's one of the best things that I've become part of. I got referred and recommended to join back in February of this year, and it's one of the best things I've ever done. It came at such a good time in terms of where I'm at in my journey, and but just the value that I've picked up and the people that I've connected with and the things that I've learned have been amazing. So just wanted to give you a
Well,
shout
thank you, Stephen. And word on the street is you might be the new philanthropy chair of Ireland, so hopefully you can help us
out.
give some money back to the Irish community.
Nice. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing where that goes. So before we get into the introductions, there's one um, observation or one comment that I want to make, and it's from a post that you posted a couple of months ago. And it says Pavilion added 3 million ARR from organic LinkedIn. Over 50% was directly attributed to my personal profile. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes, but I think it was important to just mention that at the offset because you are very open and transparent around what it's done for you and your business. So we'll get into that in a couple of minutes. So enough of me talking for now, but Sam, could you please introduce yourself, your company, what you do, where you're from, and we'll go with the flow.
Sure. I'm Sam Jacobs. I'm the founder and CEO of Pavilion. Pavilion's the best go-to-market community. It's the best community for go-to-market executives at high growth companies in the world, to my knowledge. We are 10,000 people all over the world. We have chapters to the point of this conversation in Dublin, in Paris, in New York, Boston, San Francisco, Toronto, really all over the world, but primarily in English-speaking countries. Um, in Western Europe and North America. That's where we're concentrated, and our focus and our mission is to help our members who are all CEOs, founders, and operating executives at high growth companies in the go-to-market function and the revenue function, help them unlock and achieve their professional potential and help them build enduring and lasting companies.
Mm.
So that's what we try to do. We do that through education. We do that through in-person peer-to-peer networking and experiences like the event that Stephen and I met at, and we do that through ongoing education. And that's so that's the main focus and the main effort. And yeah, what else can I tell you?
No, I think it's you raise a good point in terms of that like ongoing education. I felt like before I joined, I was a bit lost in like trying to figure out like how am I meant to stay up to date with what's going on, since I've started to work for myself when I'm not involved in a big organization anymore. So just how relevant the content is and how up to date it is, and again that probably mirrors the content that you post on LinkedIn. It's very educational to the people and your audience, which I think is important.
I mean,
You're
also,
from.
I go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, I think to the point, like there's a content piece of it, and then there's the reality that the content comes from the community itself. And so the most valuable interactions and education you can get is just from talking to your peers, which is what we're trying to, we're trying to create a structure where whether you're in Dublin or London or San Francisco or Brazil, that there's a group of people that are aligned against a similar ideology and the underpinning values that support Pavilion, and then aligned against a common methodology around like how to build a great company, how to go to market in the right way. And that's where a lot of our learning programs have emerged from. So, to your point.
Nice. I heard on your podcast on the weekend. So Sam hosted a podcast called Top Line. It was my first time listening, I will admit, but I really, really enjoyed it.
Oh,
Um, there was a discussion around the Toronto chapter looking at creating some sort of co-working space.
yeah, they created it in partnership with a company called Startwell, and then later today, I'm talking to WeWork, and the goal is to create Clubhouse. We already have a Clubhouse in London, and we
Mm.
have a Clubhouse in Toronto, and we want to create Clubhouses in all of our chapters all over the world, so that there's a central meeting point. But we don't necessarily want to become a real estate company, so we want to partner with WeWork or somebody like WeWork to help us put that
Well,
that
the
forward.
interesting thing is I'm currently sitting in Dogpatch Labs in Dublin, and those who are based here in Ireland will definitely know what Dogpatch Labs is. It's an amazing co-working space that runs an accelerator program with its partner NDRC. So I'm planning on meeting Dave in here actually to
Oh,
discuss
great.
charity stuff. So we can
Well,
maybe
maybe talk to the Dog Patch Labs people about making this like a pavilion
yeah, exactly.
pavilion spot.
Okay. Appreciate the intro, Sam. And what I'll do now is just ask a question like, why do you post content on LinkedIn?
It's a great question. Well, let's see. I believe, like, let's work backwards from kind of like a couple of first principles. The first is that there's just a tremendous amount of noise in the world, and especially on social media, including LinkedIn. And there's a lack of authentic, interesting storytellers and authentic, interesting content. And that's thing number one. And thing number two is related to that. I think that brands in general have an opportunity to differentiate themselves and to stand out uh, by being authentic, by being transparent, by telling interesting stories and having a point of view on the world. And third, my audience,
Mm,
people that I want to join Pavilion, are primarily on LinkedIn.
mm,
So it makes it a very natural place to have an ongoing conversation that isn't, that you could think of as, brand related or top of funnel related, in the sense that I'm not explicitly trying to sell people all the time.
mm,
I am trying to teach people and educate people and have interesting conversations. But because these are people that I would want to be my customers, it keeps them in my orbit and in the orbit of my company, Pavilion, in a way that I think redounds to our benefit. I would also add that um, people just gravitate towards other people and less to corporate brands. So the companies that try to have a conversation, meaning share ideas, have an ongoing dialogue through their corporate LinkedIn presence or their corporate Instagram presence or their corporate profile, are not as successful as individual human beings with all of their flaws and all of their both shortcomings and strengths and weaknesses. I think that's just what people gravitate to. So that's all of that is like the preamble for why. Also, and it's something I enjoy doing. I happen to be, I think, reasonably good at it. And as a consequence of all of that, it's helped me build an audience. I started doing this actively in the summer about 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, I had about 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, and today I have about 95,000.
yeah.
And I, to the point of the statistic that you mentioned at the top, I think, for better or worse, I think that it has, in a difficult economic environment where we've seen like the biggest tech recession of our generation,
Mm,
it's helped maintain Pavilion's position. And it is a it is a meaningful part of our demand generation effort. So the shortest answer to the question is why do I do it is because it helps make money for my business and helps us grow. But the longer answer is it helps me stay and helps us stay in front of and engage with a much larger, we have 10,000 members and I have 95,000 followers. So
Mm.
my audience is 10 times bigger than our paid membership, which is I guess is an interesting way to think about cultivating. Again, if you're a marketer thinking about top of the funnel, thinking about creating broad attention that you can slowly over time move people down the funnel and towards some level of conversion. But that me describing it like that makes it sound a little bit more calculated and cynical than it actually is.
Yeah.
Like the bottom line is that it's a lot of fun to have a point of view on the world and get to share it with lots of people and have them respond and react. And over time, you begin to build to the point, a following, a group of people that identify with your perspective, and that can become an ongoing conversation and a dialogue. So
Mm. Because your business is a community business, and let's say a peer, or one of the co-hosts from the top line, who may be in a software business, are you seeing like leaders like that, your peers also being as consistent as you are, or do you think you're more aware of it because you're building a community-based business? So do you feel it's more important for you, or is it important for everybody?
I think it's important for everybody. I think that Asad's built has an audience. He runs a recruiting firm. He doesn't run a community. AJ has an audience. He runs a software commission, a sales commission planning business,
Mm,
not community. Andy Byrne, the CEO of Clary, posts regularly. He doesn't run a community. He runs, a revenue intelligence platform.
mm,
Nick Meta posts regularly. He doesn't run a community. He runs Gainsight. So I don't think it's specific. Listen, I think that the distinguishing factor is are you any good at it?
yeah.
And a lot of people, I mean, listen, I think that there's definitely room for all of the all of the supporting cast around the idea of content creation. So there's room. I have an editor, but I don't have a ghostwriter. And I don't really believe in ghostwriters, but I can see why they exist. And that doesn't mean I don't think other people should be able to use them. But fundamentally, if you are somebody that has trouble expressing themselves through the written word,
Mm,
or has trouble telling stories, either in any format, then, there's an idea like every CEO should start creating content on LinkedIn. Well, not if they're not good at it.
mm,
I mean, some CEOs are better. Now, it is probably true that one of the requirements or one of the prerequisites for being a great CEO is being an effective communicator. So it would be strange if you had a CEO that was completely inept at telling stories and creating
mm,
content and sharing insights. But I don't, but that's not, that doesn't mean that everybody, there are definitely exceptions. And maybe there's certain people that are just simply great technically,
mm,
or they're great operators, or they're great process people, or they're great one-to-one communicators, but they're not great one-to-many communicators.
mm,
For whatever the reason, it may not be right for everybody, but for the people that are good at sharing ideas, it's a pretty compelling platform.
mm,
And I just think it's like I said, we live in a world where large language models and Gen AI and average marketers writing copy for average SDRs, like I think there's a preponderance of content and a lot of it is generic and banal.
mm,
And all you need to do is look at your LinkedIn inbox and, see how many messages people send you. I really think your profile is interesting, or, just the level of banality, the level of noise out there in the world can be overwhelming. And that doesn't, but what that means is that if you have something interesting to say and something unique to say, and you're willing, and this is the most important part, you're willing to do it, pretty much every day for 10 years,
mm,
and 10 years is simply a euphemism for a long time. If you're willing to do it consistently for a long time and you have something interesting to say, and maybe the right way to say it is you have an interesting you have the ability, because you look at the world somewhat differently, you have the ability to generate original insights and takes as your situation evolves. Yeah, then I think it's a really good thing. And I think again, it can add humanity to your business, it can add authenticity to your business. People can develop an emotional connection. And again, in that way, it's very similar to a brand.
Mm,
Uh, and it is a brand, it's your brand, but it is tying your brand to your company's brand in a way, hopefully, that propels both of them forward.
mm. Brilliant. What I've noticed with when you talk about content and even on the podcast, you mentioned around like what your superpower is and about being authentic and connecting with people in a meaningful and deep way. And I love that's the top of your mind because it's clear that comes out in your content. So I think that's a great tip for founders who might be listening to this or anybody who's listening to this is like be yourself, be authentic. Don't try to create someone who you're not because that won't last. You might be able to do it for a couple of weeks, but when a couple of months come by, you're going to get lost. So,
It
uh,
doesn't scale. And yeah, I mean, there's two sides, right? There's on the one side, there's hire a copywriter and a social media manager, and all you do is like proofread something that somebody else has written, and everything you're talking about is so obviously directly connected to your business, and it
mm,
feels, I just think that people, especially, there's a group of marketers in this world, they just don't get that the more you try to beat somebody over the head to buy, like, people's radar is up, people's guard is up,
mm,
right? We are waiting for somebody to lie to us. We are waiting for somebody, we are waiting to realize that our favorite people are compromised by whoever they're sponsored by or whoever's paying them to write this post. And I think it's very important that you try to be non-transactional in your interactions with your audience.
mm,
And so your instinct is to like say, well, I'm the CEO of a business analytics tool. So all I'm going to talk about is why my tool is great and why business, and instead of saying, I'm going to trust that if I tell interesting stories that are honest and authentic, even if some of them paint my company in a less flattering light, that in the aggregate, what I will do is build trust with my audience. And brands, the purpose of brands and the strength of brands is directly related to trust. We all want to trust. That's why lying is so effective, because
mm,
humans want to believe other humans. We want to believe in a different world, in a better world. At the same time, we know that, and we're worried that we're all going to be taken advantage of, that we're all going to be suckers. And so there's this balance that we have to navigate when we're creating content and we're trying to tell these stories.
mm,
But those stories are fundamentally powerful if we can adhere to some level of authenticity and transparency. So anyway, my point is, like, people, their instinct is to be like, okay, I'm going to write a bunch of blog posts on LinkedIn about how they should buy my thing over and over again. And it's like, well, obviously that's not going to work. It wouldn't work on you if you were the customer. So why would it work when you're doing it? And so there's this balance of how do I, how do I have a long-term view about this initiative? This is not a I think if you have any founders that you're working with, Stephen, or anybody that you're advising, or anybody that's listening to this, this is not like a tactic to hit your revenue target for this quarter.
mm.
Like, that's not what this is. This is about 5 years, 10 years. This is about establishing your company and your brand as a trusted resource.
It's exactly what I posted a conversation I had last week with another founder is he talked about the long-term strategy. A founder who I worked with recently posted a couple of posts and then after a couple of weeks she says, "Oh, I didn't get anything from that." And I was like, that's not how that's not how you approach
People
it.
don't, they don't, yeah, I mean, it's just like, you can't, it's like going to the gym for 3 weeks and being like, all right, well, I thought I was going to run a marathon. I can't run a marathon. It's like, yeah, well, it takes 13 weeks of training.
Yeah,
Well, I thought I was going to be able to bench 225 pounds 10 times. It's like, okay, well, you will if you keep at it.
yeah, that's a great
So
analogy. Great analogy. So you've been in the podcast game from what I see from 2018, and I think content LinkedIn obviously isn't the only channel that you use, and as I said, the podcast since 2018. But what's your journey been like since then, and like how did you get into that in originally, and how have things unfolded from that point?
Well, I think in general, for better or for worse, I've always had the ability to have a sharp point of view that can be polarizing.
Mm,
And so 2018, Max Altshuler called me and said, do you want to be that we're launching? I want to launch a podcast, but I only want to do it if I have someone interesting to host. So will you host it? And I said, sure. And so that I did that from 2018 probably to 2021. I'm
mm,
not sure exactly when I stopped, but I did a couple hundred episodes. It was, and it was a big deal. I think it really helped Pavilion, to be honest. Um, and it's a form of, I like podcasting because, especially this new format with Top Line, the Sales Hacker format is a one-on-one interview where you ask a bunch of templated questions and you try to dig into that person's expertise. And listen, I've gotten feedback from some people that say that that's my preferred format because I'm trying to learn something very specific. Um, for me, I stopped doing it, and the reason I stopped doing it was I was just burned out from that format. I just the same thing over and over and over again, where it's like me asking questions just became less interesting. So, I wasn't doing a podcast for a little while, and then Silicon Valley Bank collapsed last year
mm,
at the beginning of 2023, so a year and a half ago. And at that time, we did a webinar with Pavilion, and I called two of my friends and said, will you do this webinar with me? Just to talk about the implications. And one of them was this guy, Asad Zaman, who's the CEO of Sales Talent Agency. And another was AJ Bruno, the CEO of QuotaPath. And we just had a lot of fun on that webinar. And so we said, well, what if we
mm,
tried to do a podcast? And at the time, this sort of friends having a chat style had become popularized partially by the guys at All In, so Chamath Palihapitiya and Jason Kalkanis and Dave Freeberg and David Sachs, and also the guys at Smartless, uh, Jason Bateman and
mm.
get the other Sean and Will, whatever their name, Will Arnett. So um, anyway, so yeah, so we started doing that. We did it. We started really in April of 2023. We've done 71 episodes so far.
Mhm.
And it's fun. And it's fun because it keeps you focused on what's happening in the world and it sort of forces you to continue to have ideas. And it's also fun because you get to talk to your friends and bring on other people. And I guess that's so go ahead, Stephen.
It's interesting that you say that because it's the one thing that I noticed after listening to the podcast was it sounded like I was sitting in on you three having dinner and having conversations together because you were being very open about like things that you're working on and where you might not be too strong and where you are strong, and it was I liked that element of the podcast where you just three years were just talking about like each other and things that you're doing and real life stuff. It wasn't just business and this.
No, not at all. I mean, I think that's the most that's for some people and not for others. But yeah, this is fundamentally it's a podcast where the backdrop is current events in go to market and in the venture capital ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, and then it is three CEOs that are operating companies in that ecosystem.
Mm,
And it's about our journey as CEOs against the backdrop of having investors trying to grow their business, trying to face challenges as operators, but I think it becomes most interesting when we're talking less about like what do I think is going to happen to interest rates or how do I feel about the DOJ's ruling on Google, and most interesting when it's well, what does that mean for how to be a great CEO and what are the challenges and struggles that I've faced. So
brilliant. In terms of the impact, when I opened up, I talked about your post from a couple of months ago around the AOR that you attribute to LinkedIn and your page, but is there anything else that comes to mind for you in terms of what it's brought you and your business, whether it's new clients, speaking engagements?
Yeah, I mean, it's brought me new clients, speaking engagements, sponsorship revenue. It's, because I have the audience that I have, to the point of like trying to be authentic and non-transactional, but at the same time, it's brought me, I'm able to advise new companies in meaningful ways because of the platform that I have. When I advise those companies, I could bring them into Pavilion and do cool stuff with them. So I'm advising a company called Otter.ai, which does a meeting recorder, but also they're getting more involved with Pavilion as a result of that advisory work. So there's, um, there's all I think there's like all of these synergistic benefits. The one thing I would say before, I just want to like underscore before we wrap up for anybody listening to this, is that it really, to the point of like the comment about the gym, like this is, you have to have a long-term view. When I see people say, I'm going to start posting, or it's the same thing as when people said, I don't know if anybody was, around during 2004, 2005, 2003, when people would say, I'm going to start a blog, and they would start it on Blogger, and they'd say, hello world, today on this blog, you will begin over the next couple of years, you will find this, and that.
Mm,
And then they'd write for 2 or 3 days, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then you wouldn't see any post for like a year or 2 years. And then the next post would be, hey everybody, as if anybody gave a shit. Hey everybody, I'm gonna be back. I'm back at it. I'm gonna be recommitted. You might have noticed where I've gone. I've just been really busy. They're like talking to themselves, right? And nobody cares. And my point is, this is not a thing. It is not about one good idea.
mm,
It's like, hey, I wrote this long post and it's this dense essay. And I wrote this essay and, everybody should be aware of it. And it's like, no, it's not about one idea. It's about the process of having an interesting point of view every single day. It's about the consistency and the discipline of having ideas, learning how to share them effectively, and putting them out into the world every single day for a long time. And on any given post, not expecting anything. I had this one post comparing, unicorns to donkeys, which was coming out of, and it was probably a year and a half ago at this point, maybe a year ago. And it, got like 15,000 likes. I mean, it was the one thing I've done that went like super viral.
mm,
I didn't think it was going to go viral before I wrote it, and I haven't been able to recreate it since. And it's not about that. It's not about, and maybe other people are more scientific. I'm sure Mr. Beast is, but as far as my approach to the world, it is simply about continuing to create interesting ideas and put them out into the universe with consistency.
mm. 100%. I'm conscious of time here, but so I suppose to wrap it up, Sam,
Mhm.
you've discussed so much and there's been so much valuable information that you've shared, but is there anything that you would like to wrap up in a couple of sentences to close it off?
Well, there's a whole process to this, and we teach a course at Pavilion around it. So if you're interested, come find me. But the bottom line is, there's a multi-step process that if you're thinking about creating specifically for LinkedIn, but just so I can go deeper some other time. But first thing, because this can also appear and present as overwhelming and intimidating to people.
Mm,
So let's start. First thing is your profile. Like at a minimum, optimize your profile. Even if you don't create content, you're not posting anything, just make sure your profile is optimized to be a landing page for your business that converts, that you have a point of view on conversion that leads to people becoming aware of what you're doing. That's the first thing. The second thing is, okay, you've got your profile optimized and there's tools and lessons that we can teach you. The second is, okay, you're scared about creating content. Let's start commenting. Commenting is the easiest way to piggyback on other people's large audiences and write something interesting and inevitably begin to build a brand for yourself. Chris Walker at Refine Labs built his strategy by commenting thoughtfully, long comments, thoughtful comments on other people's posts before he started posting originally. Okay, then the next thing is audience creation. That's where posting comes into play. That's where being consistent, understanding the format, understanding the hook, understanding like how to create a content. And then the final piece of it is monetization and conversion, which is, okay, you've built the audience. What are the lessons that you can employ to turn that audience into customers for your business and begin to take people off of LinkedIn, which is someone else's platform, it's Microsoft's platform, and turn it back to your platform, or at least have more of an owned audience. So it's a four-step process, but audience content creation is only the third step of that process. And
Mm,
so even if you're like, I don't really know, I don't know about all this. Okay, let's get your profile in shape and let's start commenting. And even if you do those two things, there'll be more in the game than anybody else.
fantastic. Brilliant. I love the how clear it is and the steps that people can take. So, Sam, I appreciate your time. We'll end it there and looking forward to continuing watching your content.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. Great seeing you.